It was a transition parliament, and as expected, it got off on a bumpy ride. For the next 5 years, the House was never short of political drama. The years 1990, 1991, and 1992 will go down in the annals of history. As the season, Kenyans witnessed a rebirth of the nation. It was the climax of the second liberation struggle that saw pro-democracy champions successfully fight with their sweat, life, and blood to restore multi-party democracy in the country. For a long time, the KANU regime had resisted the push to repeal Section 2A of the Constitution. But it was just a matter of time. The unrelenting and non-repentant political activists sustained pressure through the bloody Sabasaba protests, and come 1991, the Rubicon had been crossed. President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi caught many of his party members by surprise when, on December 3, 1991, he announced the repeal of the contentious Section 2A of the Constitution. The move that paved way for multi-party democracy in Kenya. On Tuesday, December 29, 1992, the country went to the polls, whose outcome ushered in the 7th Parliament in Kenya. This was a unique parliament, in that for the first time since 1966, there would be more than one party in parliament. It was a transition from single to multi-party parliament, which coincidentally brought on board all forces that for years had been attempting to oust KANU party from power. The 7th Parliament was literally a continuation of the struggle. It was an extraordinary august house. Francis Xavier Kausai Ole Kaparo was the speaker.
And it was a momentous time because prior to the convening of that parliament, we underwent as a country very, very difficult campaign period, followed by a lot of violence during the campaign period. Indeed, at that time, it was quite dangerous to ride in government vehicles. Any vehicle that was written GK was quite a risk to ride because those members who opposed the government hated everything associated with the government, including its vehicles. And so it was a difficult time. We had very, very difficult elections in 1991-92. And when the House finally reconvened in January 23rd of 1993, we had members of parliament who were very hostile to one another. And the House was evenly divided. We had 112 members on the government side and about 100 members on the opposition. So it was.
Former Samburu Senator Sami Leshore and current Bungoma Senator Moses Wetangula were first-time MPs then on KANU ticket. Paul Mwite as well, who was Ford Kenya's first national vice chair. They all paint a picture of how difficult the House was. KANU, Ford Kenya, Ford Asili, and DP were the major parties.
That parliament was novel in the politics of Kenya in that it was crowned with suspicion, it was crowned with bravado. You know, here were crusaders for multipartyism that came into the House with a lot of gusto, ready to oppose anything and everything. A lot of suspicion on the government side to see whether there were people who were fraternizing and collaborating with the opposition. So there were difficulties even in personal relationships between members.
We were at points where we could not talk to each other. You see anybody from Ford Asili, Ford Kenya, It's just like an enemy. It's just like Pokota and Turkana down the Kiro Valley.
Oh, it was very, very difficult because, I mean, I remember some of us, like me, just starting up to contribute even to a non-contentious bill. Akina Sharif Nazir would stand up and start shouting to drown my voice.
Then House Speaker Francis Ole Kaparo discloses how it was nearly impossible to transact House business for a long time. Martha Karua was then a DP legislator.
And I can tell you it was very, very difficult because the members on the government side would not salute the members on the opposition side. And the reverse was true. The opposition members would not say hello to those from the government side. That bad. And it remained so for a long time. It was a house of enmity.
We were never shy to tell the KANU regime where they were going wrong, and we were never shy of using our voices to drum up for change. It was a very, very tough time. The Speaker was not always kind to us as the minority, but he would try his best within the constraints of that time. I remember one time I was, shall I say, insulted by a male member of parliament because I asked about harassment of women in, it's Mount Elgon, I've remembered. And when I asked the Speaker to tell the member to withdraw and apologize, the members on the opposite side, on the KANU side, also wanted me to apologize because I said what the member had done was use primitive antics, which is really not an insult, it's factual. The Speaker ruled that we both apologize. It was a temporary deputy speaker, not the substantive speaker. And I obviously refused because it was unfair. I told the Speaker that I could only add more suitable adjectives. And you can imagine we were both sent out. So even the chair would at times, more often than not, be oppressive to the opposition. And that was the difficult parliament we were in.
Moses Wetangula had been nominated as an MP, having been among President Moi's legal advisors and lawyers, would occasionally run affairs of the House as a member of the Speaker's panel.
And the acrimony that followed debates, the hostility between members of the front bench on the government side and members of the shadow cabinet on the opposite side was very visible. Debates were quite heralded with shouting at each other, name-calling, and we had physical fights on the floor once in a while, especially during the day when the opposition members, led by the member then for Embakasi called Ruhyu, tried to grab the mess. And there was not only heated exchange, but acrimonious physical confrontation, where you could see there was a member called Oletuya, literally crying out like a Moran, ready to fight, and so on.
92 to 97 was the feeling of helplessness, even as members of parliament, that we had, even on occasions, to disrupt parliament to be heard. And if we had not remained consistent, as a group, we were several different political parties, but we always coalesced in parliament as the opposition to battle KANU. And that way, even though we were totally outnumbered, they had what would generally be called the tyranny of numbers. It never stopped us from pushing our agenda in and out of parliament.
Some claim that the front bench was under surveillance from the onset.
The staff of parliament would be seconded from the national intelligence. The whole place was flooded by national intelligence.
What had brought about that bad blood? Why was it that it was difficult for MPs to talk for 5 months?
It was brought by our senior politicians. Brought by our senior politicians. They used to tell us when, because we were new assemblies, those people are your enemies. Those people are your enemies. You should not know. They should not know what you're doing. It was brought by senior politicians.
The standoff persisted for nearly 6 months, and it took the intervention of two benefactors of the 7th Parliament, the US and the UK. Together, they embarked on a bipartisan engagement with the MPs who had to be flown to the US and the UK to get exposure on how opposition and ruling party MPs coexist. It is reported that KANU and opposition MPs were not talking to each other for about 6 months, at least not in public.
We were at points where we could not talk to each other. If you see anybody from Fort Asili, Fort Kenya, it's just like an enemy.
It took me time to get that house working. It continued for over 6 months without members of the government and those of the opposition talking to one another. I had to send a complement of 15 members to the US, 8 from the government side and 7 from the opposition side. And as they traveled all the way to the US, at the 6th month of the election, they were not talking to one another. And 2 days in Washington, they were still not talking to one another.
What a teen. I was among those KANU MPs. Honorable Kirwa was our team leader. I remember Vibia Zio, Kishuki from Nyandarua, and a few others who are now senators, like Abishiaba, we were together. Somebody who passed on was from Mandera. Quite a number. We were 13 in total. And we could not talk to each other. We boarded a KQ plane from Nairobi to Paris. When we reached Charles de Gaulle Airport, one of our colleagues from the opposition was Mr. Gishuki, Honorable Gishuki, lost his briefcase with all the money he had. So they informed Honorable Kirwa that Honorable Gishuki lost his briefcase. Kirwa came quietly, and we were at another corner, and they were in another corner. We could not even meet. So when Honorable Kirwa came to us, I told him, then what are we going to do? Because we don't talk to these guys. What are we going to do? Then I told him, Mheshimiwa Kirwa, we are in foreign land, and we must start behaving like Kenyans. This behavior of not talking to each other, because you belong to another party, should not arise here. Let's kill it now. When we reach America, let's start talking to each other. Then I was supported by Vibia CEO. Say, Leshore is right. We are Kenyans when we go out.
Leshore claims that upon his return from the US bonding trip, he was summoned by powers that be.
I knew after we came back from America, I was reported. Then when I went to see the head of state, President retired, he asked me, what is this I'm hearing? I told him, Mzee,